That was banned away from him last time. And Teddy, is he going to be able to get his Jin?
That's also true. Teddy actually in an interviews, we see that Victor banned away from Kuzan immediately. In an interview with Osan, Teddy actually said that he actually thought the Corki pick might have been banned away against him, since he has actually played that when he was previously performing, I believe, in LSPL. So nice to see maybe a 2-for-1 value off of the Corki ban, and there it is, coming out on your screen.
So Victor Trundle Corki for the Rocks Tigers, banned away from Jin Air Green Wings, and there's that Victor banned away. And like I was saying, I expect a more mechanically intensive mid laner for the Tigers. Cassiopeia is existing in the meta right now. Unfortunately, Syndra is banned away right there, but Ryze is also on the table, so I expect to see one of those two. And right now there is a Cassiopeia hover.
That's actually really exciting because we've gotten a chance to see Cry showcase, I think, primarily his Azir, which is when he was brought in as, like you said, a more mechanical mid laner who could pilot that champion very effectively when it was in the meta. Now we get the chance to see him on that Cassiopeia. Now, without Victor here, what do you think is really the big focus for the Jin Air Green Wings to grab against that?
Well, it's going to be interesting how they choose to take this fight. Kuzan might actually just elect to play Ryze into it, even though the matchup's not as favorable as it once was. And I mean, getting their Jin already and the Olaf pick, Rocks Tigers definitely not any stranger to facing Olaf. They had a lot of practice against it at Worlds. I mean, it feels like right now the Rocks Tigers don't need to actually pick their AD carry, although they are hovering the Var. Well, they actually lock in the Varus and the Karma pick, so it's going to be an 80 carry Varus, and we actually get to see that earlier on in the Kespa Cup.
Or is the Ghost of Huni alive and well, and that Cassiopeia going up to the top lane from mid lane Varus? We've actually already seen one 80 carry Varus played by Loken on ESC Evers, so going to be interesting to see that run into an Olaf that could just run straight on through.
Right, and that's actually very scary that technically Rocks Tigers, all three of those champions are flexible. And that's something that's very difficult to draft against if you're Jin Air Green Wings, because you never really know. This is the first showing of the Tigers playing against since their World Semifinals against SK Telecom, where they narrowly lost. And I will say that with Elise still up and on the table, we could definitely see that picked up by Peanut. That is his favorite champion, and she is quite strong in the meta right now, although a little bit vulnerable to Olaf. And right now there's the Lee Sin and Poppy highlight, and those are two champions that have been pretty popular so far in this tournament. Lee Sin gonna fare off a little bit better against Olaf than Elise would.
Pretty popular, and that is going to do it for the Rocks Tigers draft. Last pick here coming in for the Jin Air Green Wings, and that's what's going to make this a little interesting. Now, we've seen Lysandra in a bunch of different lanes, a bunch being 2, top and mid previously. I don't think we've seen Lysandra top for quite a while, though, so I'd expect us to be looking for a top lane, any sort of counter to Poppy, and we've seen Rumble be a great one, and it'll be locked in by Che.
Yep. And so a very balanced team composition from the Jin Air Green Wings. Not as late game as I would have expected. I would definitely say that this team composition is more mid-range, and what I mean by that is that it has a heavy emphasis on the mid-game and a need to establish a lead inside of the mid-game. The Tigers definitely have a lot more control inside of their team composition, but this is a team comp that can get very explosive very quick, mostly in part due to that Lee Sin and the Cassiopeia.
It's going to be exciting to see that work out, because as we close out our picks and bans, okay, I was worried we weren't going to swap things around there. It is going to be Cry on that Cassiopeia, and of course Smeb on the Poppy. There was a world in which things could have been swapped around really crazily, but this is the one we live in. And the Jin Air Green Wings, of course, with a matchup we've seen previously in the top lane that will hopefully go their way if you're a Jin Air Green Wings fan. If you're a fan of the Rocks Tigers, you definitely want to see them move a little bit further than the semifinals of tournaments. It seems that's where they stopped when they went to Worlds. Can they make it any further here in the Kespa Cup, where they'll have to face some of their similar competition, as they will be fighting for the chance to face off against SKT in the semifinals of Busan. We'll see if they can make it there as we head in to our final semifinal match of the quarterfinal match of the Kespa Cup. It's the Rocks Tigers with Smeb, Peanut, Cry in the mid lane, rounded out by Prey and Gorilla. On the other side, the Jin Air Green Wings, Sohwan, Winged, Kuzan, Teddy, and Che. Teddy back on that Jin. Again, if you guys want to show your support for these teams, hashtag Rocks Tigers or hashtag Rocks win or JAG win, and of course hashtag the Kespa Cup to let everyone know what you are watching as we prepare for game number 1 of our final best of 3. There's a burning friction! I actually think the Jin Air cheer was louder, LS. Lots and lots of fans here packing out the Nexon Arena here in Seoul, South Korea for our final best of 3 of these quarterfinals. Now, we've seen a lot of shenanigans happen down here on the bottom half of the map, and it looks like this game is no different. Rocks Tigers piling on through that bottom bush, but won't find anything just yet as Che is not name changed to Hichani, and he's not going to walk right on in there.
Yeah, this is actually the first 5-man of a tournament that we've seen in a very long time, and in this Kespa Cup especially, where teams have only opted to actually fan out. So Rocks Tigers starting the game off with basically a stylistic tendency of them where they like to be very aggressive and look for any sort of edge early on.
Certainly do. The biggest thing about this, like you said, has been the unique start to the game. So what do you think is the danger of starting that 5-man bush bait every single time, and why don't we see more teams do that?
Well, basically it is a little bit of a coin flip. You do have the possibility of losing out on vision control on either your left or right-hand side of the map, and that can get a little bit dangerous with trying to read into the jungler routes after the first few camp clears. And with a blue side Lee Sin, we can probably expect to maybe see some fireworks go off in bottom lane around level 3 as Peanut makes his way to the bottom before heading back up top to hand the blue over to Try, but actually he's taking his blue buff.
Yeah, so that's what's really very interesting. Traditionally, at least what you've mentioned, we see Lee Sin start on the bottom half of the map and then wrap around to hand off blue. Of course, what you can see there right on your screen is how close this matchup was historically between these two teams, even though they finished drastically on opposite sides of the standings at the end of last season.
Yep, and right now, looks like Olaf is a little bit ahead of Peanut on making his way over to the right-hand side of the map, but 3-camp player for both junglers. Wings obviously needing that blue buff right now as he was almost out of mana.
Nice angle there by Gorilla, getting a little bit of harassment off as Karmas are wont to do. A question earlier about the Lee Sin and starting off on the blue side after we see most of them start on the red side, hand off blue. What does that really change about this jungle route comparatively?
Well, Peanut's just going to have a little bit more experience. It definitely will hinder the mid lane matchup a little bit for Cry. He could normally go a little bit more aggressive if he was given that blue buff, but it's not going to hurt at the end of the day. And it seems like Peanut is actually reading this route a lot better than Wings, and we're only 3 minutes into the match, but Peanut has actually found an advantage given the way that he elected to clear the jungle.
Peanut with an advantage is a scary spot to be in, and on this Lee Sin, especially a very aggressive jungler. We'll see what he opts for heading here through the early game. He's actually just fully cleared out his entire jungle at this point, and was looking to get as much from his first trip as possible. Now, Winged on the other side has opted for, I guess, a little bit less of a heavy jungle clear, skipping the Krugs for now and going for this Rift Scuttler. So what are the goals, the objectives for both of these junglers?
Well, in the top lane matchup of Rumble versus Poppy, unless you get Poppy to shove into Rumble, it's pretty hard to coordinate a gank against her. And likewise in mid lane, it's too difficult for Kuzan to actually find aid against Cry because...
Oh my god, Kuzan, he's in trouble. He's going to be forced to... Oh my god, Cry was so low on mana, so he couldn't follow up for the kill, but great aggression there. Kuzan, a little bit of a rough spot.
Now, this actually opens up an opportunity for Peanut to come to mid lane, wait around this brush, and as soon as Kuzan teleports back, if he tries to be greedy and teleport onto a minion, Peanut could immediately gank to follow that up, given that he still had the red buff active. And he is doing that, and it's a super big lost opportunity. Not as big of a lost opportunity, given that Winged was right there to cover, and I think that that is intentional, knowing that Peanut does have the ability to try to find his way into mid.
Pressure being put on the bottom lane as well. Not just the mid lane, as Frey and Gorilla continue to push in. Now, one of the criticisms that Teddy did have in his previous series that they played versus Longzhu is that he takes a lot of poke. Like a lot of poke. So expect to maybe see that either changed as a positive or maybe stay the same and be a liability here as Gorilla and Prey pushing on in. Now Winged, once again, there to protect the mid lane as Kuzan teleported in. Now down to the bottom half. Is this where he needs to be?
Well, at this point, it's probably the only opportunity he has. If you look at top lane, you look at mid lane, and his laners are just constantly pushing. So at this point, the question becomes, why do you have an Olaf, at least for this stage of the game, if you're going to choose to play out your lanes like this? So the only opening he has is down here in bottom lane, but against a Karma, it's pretty difficult given that she can just speed both herself and her AD carry up.
Summoner traded for Summoner. Wing, though, going to get leashed? No, runs out just in the nick of time with that Ghost. Teddy content to walk forward, even into Gorilla, as now Peanut has joined the fray in the bottom lane. No gank, but flash taken out from Gorilla.
So that's going to be actually not really a victory for Jin Green Wings, but it does apply some pressure relief to the bottom lane, and it gave Teddy at least a recall timer. And now Che going to have to stick around here to stay to try to pick up some of the experience and gold from that minion wave, so it doesn't go to complete waste.
Peanut content to herbivore it up as he has just been jungling, heading up for what should be at least soon the second blue buff. Looking to hand that over to Cry. Now, the Rocks Tigers have opted into this double tier composition with a Poppy top that's going to be behind early. So that's a lot of investment in the future. Do you think that's too much of a liability or something that Jin Air needs to really capitalize on?
Well, to point out, the Tier of the Goddess isn't super hindering to Cassiopeia, given her passive acts as boots. So it's a little bit misleading to just look at her items and assume that she has no combative stats. She has the flash over Kuzan. She doesn't really need any sort of damage because her base damage is pretty high, and Cry already doing a pretty phenomenal job in that matchup. Now, the tier down in bottom lane on Varus, it sort of is an offensive item because it enables him to continue to spam out his spells, which are his primary source of damage.
Okay, so maybe not as much of a liability as if you saw it on something like an Ezreal. Otherwise. So keeping an eye on the rest of the lanes. Haven't seen any big investments yet other than those summoner spells traded down bottom. And neither jungler really having too much of an effect. Now, we were highlighting both the junglers and the mid laners. Neither one of them is necessarily interacted, but as far as this early game goes, is there something that's really impressing you about one team or another?
No, so far, I mean, everything's been pretty good. It is a little bit impressive how Cry and Prey are managing to create gaps, basically, versus their opposing laners. Now, if you look at the CS discrepancy in mid, there is almost no discrepancy. But the problem is that Kuzan has teleport, whereas Cry does not. So for Kuzan not to have a CS advantage is a little bit problematic.
Might very well be. He's also come back to lane with a Negatron cloak, so might be a little bit more immune to being spammed out by Cry early, although he does have that tier, so we'll be getting a lot of that mana cost refunded. So with junglers finishing off their second buffs just now, it's going to put them both on red, which does offer a lot of powerful aggression opportunities. See where they can put them off, as they are kind of sitting around the mid lane, especially Winged, who just taking a trip on by.
Yep. Peanut continuing to just endlessly farm over and over, and that's because really the onus is not on Peanut to make anything happen, it's more so on Winged. And Winged has not been able to make anything happen, mostly due to, in part, how Sohan and Kuzan elected to play out their lane.
So we do have two relatively aggressive laners. Now, you talk about the anti-scaling from Olaf. Is the same thing there for Peanut's Lee Sin? Do they really have to get something accomplished early?
Well, Lee Sin has significantly less anti-scaling, given that the kick is always going to be potentially game-changing, whereas Olaf he's basically a punisher. If an opponent makes a mistake, if they misstep, Olaf is one of the best champions in the game at punishing that. But if they don't make the mistakes, then Olaf is always going to compromise your team the later a game goes.
See if this game does go late. Of course, Jin Air, a very late game team, and you mentioned that in your tweet before the game about how this is, you know, the slowest team in LCK, Jin Air versus the Rocks Tigers, who have been famed for being able to just get these crushing leads and bring them home for early victories. So we'll see if that aggression is still out there, because we haven't necessarily seen it yet.
Yeah. And some more items now picked up for Cry as he has returned to the middle lane. And it looks like Abyssal Scepter will be the first item of choice for him, which is going to be pretty good given that 2 of the 3 carries for Jin Air Green Wing steal magic damage.
Abyssal coming in. It will actually help out Sohwan as well. Taking a look at that. Oh, you meant the Abyssal that's coming in from Cry. So on Sohwan, on the other side, who's most likely also going for an Abyssal here, is that really quite as valuable? Who gets the most value out of that itemization?
Well, so Kuzan gets the value out of it because Sohwan is also going to be able to benefit from it.
Okay.
So in an offensive manner, Kuzan and Sohwan benefit from it, but in a defensive manner, Cry benefits from it.
All right, so different ways. Now, Smeb going in, missing the knockup thanks to an immediate flash away, but Peanut's too good, and he's got the turnaround. Sohwan does have a teleport coming his way, the equalizer on the wave, but not onto Smeb, and that will result in overall non-factor as both laners make it out alive, although the investment of Kuzan's TP, did that make it better for Rocks? That
does make it better for Rocks because Smeb didn't actually use his summoner. So they trade flashes up there in the top lane. Now, Peanut losing his flash at this point in the game is not nearly as impactful as Sohwan losing his flash, because now he's very vulnerable to Poppy if he makes a misstep again, because Peanut's not going to need that flash to actually get into position. Kuzan losing his teleport definitely means that Cry was able to develop a little bit more of a CS lead, and not just a CS lead, but an experience lead as well.
Experience very important. Now we're all the way past level 6, so everybody's got all of their spells, but what's the next real power point? Is it just experience to get levels, or, oh my god, Kuzan actually walking pretty far forward, taking the claw back out, but that was pretty aggressive. Yeah, that was a little bit over-eager, I think, by Kuzan to try to take that trade, but it's not going to matter so much as you can see, Cry does not have too much mana remaining. Teddy moving up now with Che. This could actually set up for a curtain call. They could be looking for an execute on Cry, but I don't think that they would ever find it, given the fact that Cry has cleanse. Well, I don't think that they should be able to expect to walk all the way up the river without being scouted out at some point. They will reveal the ward that did scout them out, moving up the river, and walk right back down. So no pick potential there. Cry full HP, but is relatively low on mana. Perfect timing there for the blue buff, which Peanut will hand over. Now with this blue buff, Cry is really going to be able to inflict a lot of pain onto Kuzan, who does not have teleport, is looking for his recall right now. And immediately after this recall, he should be able to pick up the Abyssal Scepter, and that's actually going to synergize with Wing heading over to the right-hand side of the map. So Kuzan's going to get his blue buff, and at that point, you should expect that Jin Air Green Wings should ideally have their eyes set on Inferno Drake, but Wing with a little bit of different intention as he moves up to the top half of the map, but you can never find a kill onto Smeb right here. Playing it pretty safely, and also kind of interesting as well, with such a heavy commitment towards the bottom half of the map by Jin Air to ward this up. They put 3 pink wards right around that barren area, and now they're going to lose most of them because, well, in part, I guess Wing was top lane. Yep, and because Wing moved top lane for virtually unknown reasons, they end up losing their blue buff, and right now they do have the item advantage over their opponents. Teleports up for both top laners. And Rocks definitely should not be looking to fight right now. More pink wards found out, though. Yeah, so kind of questionable to see Jin Air commit to such a heavy presence on the bottom half, then leave, lose everything, and now might be in a rougher spot when it comes to contesting that Baron that was so heavily previously warded. And right now, Teddy probably looking for a recall. Both bot laners are, but off that first recall, Prey is going to come out considerably far ahead because Varus is just not someone that you want to have an advantage over any of your team, and his damage that he's able to dish out from extremely long ranges is pretty obnoxious for this Jin Air team comp. And while we do see him more traditionally in a mid lane role, I guess, he's actually been played more as an AD than he has as a mid laner. Oh my god. All right, how about that extreme range damage? Teddy taken super low, but should be safe enough. No, he's forced to stop his recall again. Junglers battling it out in the river, and lots of pressure for this Jin Air bottom lane that just are not being allowed back to base.
Yeah, and Peanut just basically staying on top of Winged, and that's all that he needs to do. Talked about this in the very early stages of the game, where the onus is not on him to make anything happen.
Oh, there comes the there. So we'll lock Winged down maybe just a little bit. Turrets, though, the important objective. That's taken first turret blood for Rox Tigers at 15 minutes.
Yeah, and that is going to propel them to a 2.2k gold lead. And that's not something that you want to be happening if you're Jin Air Green Wings, because their composition is one that wanted to explode during the mid game, and so far they haven't managed to make that happen. And a lot of the scaling components of the Rox's team composition has basically been enabled, and that's pretty scary right now. And I wouldn't be surprised now if we actually just see rotations made over to the mid lane. We might see some Drake congestion. Peanut definitely wants to steal this.
Definitely will be some Drake congestion as it does look to get clogged. Now, it's going to be actually immediately taken there by Winged, but can Rox turn it right back around, flashing over the flanking Smeb, but will it be enough for Rox to find kills? They will find first blood in there as well on Che. So first turret blood, first champion blood, but no Inferno Drake.
Yeah, no Inferno Drake for them, but Kuzan could die right here. He doesn't have flash, he doesn't have his ultimate.
Trying to get to a good spot. Actually does take the claw to a decent one. Wing, though, with too much damage coming his way. He's going to go down. Teddy all alone, flashing over the wall that he's pounded into. He'll make it out safely. Well, I don't know how safely that really is. Loses both of his summoner spells. He's totally out of the fight, and that means Rox are going to crack another turret.
Yep, Rox are definitely going to get this turret right here. Smeb now taking the turret aggro, and I mean, this is that explosive game that I was talking about, where yes, Jin Air Green Wings got the Inferno Drake, but Smeb able to find a flank teleport to get inside, and we're going to take a quick look at it. So you see Smeb was already in position, Cry coming straight up, flashed the tidal wave, really good, and then able to pin Che against the wall, having missed his bubble. At this point, Teddy just trying to get as much damage down as he possibly could, but Rox had their eyes set on the middle lane turret. And at that point, Sohwan was way too late to arrive to the fight. Kuzan stayed around a little too long in mid lane, not having flash or his ultimate up, forced to retreat.
And one thing at the end of that fight was Teddy's positioning, which wound up forcing him to blow both of his summoner spells just to stay alive. What do you think about Teddy so far this game? Now that, I mean, he has identical itemization with Prey, but as far as positioning goes, what's your analysis?
Well, they're two entirely different champions, where Prey offers a lot in the immediate team fight, whereas Teddy, with that Yumu's Ghost Blade, but unfortunately, due to the team composition, unable to really stay up and close inside of the fights. And so the Yumu's, while it will certainly help him, Teddy is basically just an ultimate bot right now.
Ult bot. All right, that's why I keep saying parenting advice, teach your kids how to press R growing up. It'll make them great at League of Legends, at least when they play Jin or similar champions here. We're going to have a next generation of Karthus mains out there. Either way, it's looking okay for Jin Airs. They do have that dragon, and they're not dropping down too far in gold. But the really scary thing to me is starting to be these turrets as they continue to fall. Do you think that Tigers are just like methodically taking this one step at a time, or is it something that Jin Air could improve on? Oh, Che. Oh, boy. Not Che's day. He's out of there for the third kill.
With that kill onto Che, and given the fact that Kuzan's in bottom lane right now, I wouldn't be surprised if after taking this blue buff, there is definitely an opportunity to just try to keep Cry in bottom lane and maybe apply pressure up there in top lane, as Sohwan under a little bit of pressure by Smeb right now, but they don't have a really clear-cut way to defend any sort of rotation up to top.
We're going to replay of this pick onto Che. This is just caught between a rock and a big kick from Peanut.
Yep, and so that was just a pretty clean-cut kill. And Che ends up falling down again.
So at this point, that's Che's second death kind of Kind of interesting. Jin Air do have a secondary support suite, or formerly known as XD, if they do want to bring him in a little bit later on. But is the problem just Che getting caught out, or is there a bigger issue for Jin Air?
Well, their bigger issue is that Sohwan and Kuzan played the laning phase relatively poor compared to who their jungler was. And so because of that, it put Winged in this uncomfortable pressure spot where he wasn't able to really do anything except in bottom lane. But the problem in bottom lane is that Prey and Gorilla completely outplayed Teddy and Che almost in every single way. And Peanut was just able to comfortably sit back and continue to farm his jungle. And now we've reached this mid-game stage where Jin Air Green Wings down 5,000 gold. Doesn't really look like they have anything clear-cut they could do. And, I mean, with Morel and Omicron completed for Cry, I wouldn't be surprised if blue buffs are then handed off to Prey in the future, because that Varus siege is so obnoxious for Jin Air to deal with.
Yeah, we've seen incredible poke damage from an all-season last year in LCK, and we've seen it back here in Kespa Cup, as its performance here is, I don't know, it looks a little bit better than when Loken did pilot it. At least Prey now finally getting the opportunity to rotate out of his bottom lane into the mid and continue putting this pressure on. So what's the reasoning here by ROX Tigers to make that rotation from bottom up to mid, and then, like you said, to maybe try to sit Cry down there, who's now coming back up?
Well, it's all about creating pressure at locations that are going to be unfavorable for your opponents. And right now, Jin Air Green Wings, generally they would like to be fighting right around this point, but the ROX Tigers are too far ahead, and so forcing them to move to the top-hand side of the map when Dragon was going to be a minute or 2 minutes away would force them to devote and commit resources to a part of the map that would be generally unfavorable for where the next fight and major objective is going to be.
Good snipe there on Che, and as far as, well, where this next major objective is, it's 4 seconds till this Dragon is going to come back up, and with both top laners with teleport, they are heading that way. Now, there's no way for Sohwan to stop Smeb from teleporting down there, whereas on the other hand, lots of opportunities for Poppy to interrupt the Rumble from joining this fight. Is that something these teams have to keep in mind, or, oh man, might actually not be able to talk about it? Prey trying to run his way away as quickly as possible. He's got that support from Gorilla. We'll get to the safe zone.
And a Cloud Drake is the one to spawn for the Tigers. Not the worst, not the best. Certainly better than Water Dragon, but not as good as Mountain and Inferno.
No smite steal there by Winged, who did come dangerously close to the area. So coming off of that Dragon, taking that objective out of the way, Jin Air is still kind of looking for the next step to take.
And the next step to take for the Jin Air Green Wings is honestly to try to find some sort of a miracle equalizer into some sort of miracle engagement from Kuzan, because right now a straight up fight is always going to be disastrous for them given how far behind they are.
Okay, loss of the red buff. It's stolen by Peanut. Follow-up non-existent as ROX get in, get the buff, and get right back out again. I think that if I'm counting correctly, that's the third buff that they've stolen away from Wings so far. Is that just the Olaf effect, or what is it that ROX is doing to allow them so much pressure and control?
Well, it's that Wings' movements, well, early on, Wings' movements were a little bit bizarre, like when we saw that they lost their blue buff. He moved up to the top-hand side of the map, even though there was clearly no way to get any sort of a gank off, and Kuzan was coming straight off of a recall. Dragon was going to be the priority, and so he had a very clear-cut ABC route to take, and he didn't take it. This time again, Peanut just beating him to the punch, and Winged is basically playing reactive when he should have been playing proactive.
That was an interesting route to get to the turret there from Peanut. I felt like he realized, he just scouted out, got into a good spot, and now ROX looking to take their third and final outer turret. Che, no, that is not going to be the turret you defend, but Kuzan might actually be able to make this one happen. Gorilla coming up, though, and maybe turning right back around as Zanya's, and now that gives time for this turret to get taken out. Not on time with the Cryo. It looks a little bit like Faker's from earlier on in the tournament in his round of 12 match. But either way, it's okay. And that means that the turret goes down, and that's 3 kills, 3 turrets, and soon to be much stronger ROX Tigers is next time they head on back.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm watching you, Winged. Winged has yet to really accomplish a whole lot other than just die in that earlier fight, and now Prey back into the safety zone. Jin Air just seemed like they're really kind of struggling to find what their next step is going to be.
Well, first tower of the game picked up for them anyway. Yeah, but it comes at the cost of being entirely out of position for this mid lane siege, and with Varus making his way up the mid lane, it's very unlikely that, well, never mind, they have their eyes set on Sword.
Oh my god, beautiful. Stun into the wall, follow-up kick, the knock-up, but even still, Sohan surviving for so long, he'll finally get taken out of there, not without popping that Maw of Malmortius for Peanut. Interesting itemization, but Smeb in the backline in onto Kuzan will get the stun into a follow-up stun there. Cry will get exhausted. As Kuzan heals up, he's going to get locked into his Glacial Tomb. Peanut low, but off to the backside. It's going to be a kill there for Cry to make it a 2-for-1 exchange as Peanut did fall. Oh my goodness, Smeb walking forward. I was thinking he was about to make another engage happen, but it looks like instead Rock's disengaging. Content to continue their pressure in the bottom lane.
Yeah, and Prey looking to poke people out right now. Doesn't deal enormous amounts of damage just yet. Still has to get a few more items, but I mean, in the end, that was a pretty big victory. Cry trying to get this blue buff. Winged, no smite, so it does end up going to Cry, and that is very painful as well.
Third blue buff in a row, stolen by the Rocks Tigers, really keeping that off of Kuzan, who couldn't have gotten it anyway because he died in that fight.
Yeah, so if we just take a look at this fight, Rocks Tigers turned their attention to Swohan due to him being out of position, and when they finished him up, you see the teleport coming in from bottom lane. Peanut put the Q on the Gromp because I think he wanted to just hop over via the Q, but then forced to flash because his Maw was off cooldown, or on cooldown at that point. Kuzan Zanyazing one more time, but it wasn't enough to save him. Meanwhile, in the background, we see Wings come in, pick up the kill onto Peanut, but then Olaf do what he does best. As he runs away.
The race car Olaf just zooms through your team, bops the low health guy, and makes it back out the other side. I guess that's Wing's moment to shine. It's just kind of funny to see him like swinging his axes around, you know, gives the boop to Peanut and takes him on out of there. Now Peanut walking forward, and some nice jukes around, everything thrown his way. Positioning now around this Baron buff. We're 27 minutes into the game, and Tigers have a pretty sizable lead. Is Baron the objective that they should look to siege?
Well, Baron is a real objective, but you don't want to tend to do it if the enemy team has all of their champions up, because Rumble's Equalizer is a pretty easy way to dissuade you from sticking onto that Baron or finishing it. And equally, I mean, the curtain call from Teddy is going to be a pretty rough thing to try to sustain and absorb through.
All right, well now Wing versus Peanut. Looks like they will find each other out. The ward sticks as Peanut establishing this deeper pressure. Wing, though, putting out a pink to try to find one of his own, forces out his ult. Which will be very important for this upcoming fight as Peanut looks to steal away yet another buff.
And the red buff probably going to go over to Peanut here as the top tier 2 turret looks poised to fall. Although they do stop their siege right now.
Smeb, in the meanwhile, content to continue pushing this bottom half of the map, and it doesn't look like there's a whole lot to come stop. And right as I say that, Sohan diverts to come deal with this effect, and Peanut not content with just stealing buffs away. Wanted to take the Merc Wolves and won't be successful. Gets a Gromp, though.
And right now, an Inferno Drake has spawned again. We see that Cry trying to get a little bit cheeky. And I think he's going to.
Well, Wing does not have his Ragnarok, but he will be able to get out of there, at least for the moment. Continuing to try to find something, but the backline's what's vulnerable. Cry getting knocked up, getting slowed. The damage is down there, and it's actually Sohan to finish him off. The mid laner's dead for both sides, and Teddy narrowly able to survive. Who comes out ahead in the end is Rock Siege mid.
Well, Kuzan going down there is bad, but if you notice, Cry's death was a little less in vain as he managed to take Che and Teddy completely off the battlefield, and now the Tigers looking poised to take this Inferno Dragon. Once they get that, the other problem that the Jin Air Green Wings have yet to really deal with, and I hope that's not a ping to start Baron, because that would be one of the worst calls. Okay, instead it was just a ward, but you notice that there is still 2 tiers on the Rocks Tigers team composition. So once those become a different item, and hold on as we take a look at this fight, so you see that Cry able to get onto Teddy, holding his ult until the exhaust had ended. Really good intention, but unfortunately got locked up by that Nami tidal wave and unable to find the kill onto Teddy there, but that was all right as they still traded 1-for-1. But when the Monomune and Muramana come out for Prey, and when Seraph's Embrace is completed for Cry, that's a very, very big wake-up in terms of damage that the Tigers currently don't have, but it's almost here, and Jin Air doesn't have a way to respond to it.
Jin Air have struggled to respond to really most things thrown their way, and this is Wing going crazy again. It's the race car Olaf in onto Gorilla. Here comes a curtain call with a nice double bubble committed there by Che, and it does look like Gorilla might go down. No! He survives, and now it's going to be a one dead Winged out of there. Kuzan the next to fall, and Peanut looks like he might have sights set on Sohwan, who does just barely escape with his life. Two big picks for the Tigers. Whoa, my. All right, Teddy's got something to say. He is able to finally finish that kill onto Gorilla. Does that change this landscape coming into Baron?
It actually does. They aren't going to have the AoE shields that Karma can grant, and so this is a little bit dangerous, but no jungler, so they're going to be able to finish off the Baron as Cry
actually just monstering his way into the enemy team. Nothing to stop the rampage of this Cassiopeia, who takes down the carries, gets that double kill, and now Tiger is on a little bit of a long-winded chase here onto Che. She can't have a chase without the Che in it. He will be running his way all the way right. Tidecaller's Blessing's a pretty good spell to have, or passive, but in the end, Smeb is pretty fast. And now that Che is forced out of options, it will be Peanut, actually, at the end, to snipe away that kill.
And off this recall, we're going to see some big items purchased, but before that happens, we can just see, here's what Olaf basically does. He runs into the team, doesn't really deal a lot of damage, and so even though the Rocks Tigers were completely out of position, it doesn't matter as they were able to burst him down really quickly. Kuzan got locked up without actually doing anything, and at this point it was Sohan, Teddy, and Che trying to run away. Gorilla not really respecting Teddy's accuracy on that Jin, did die a moment later, and they were able to find the Baron. But, I mean, at this point, you just basically got to witness that the Rocks Tigers can just maul the Jin Air Green Wings down at this point, and they almost don't have a say in it. And there was absolutely zero response to this Varus poke.
Certainly was not. Oh my goodness, Peanut going for the 1v1! Teddy got his stuffing ripped out there. Peanut mercilessly takes him out, and I mean, when your junglers, when Rocks' junglers doing that and Winged is unable to dive in and kill their enemy support, I think there's a pretty big contrast there as the Tigers break the base and look for their first inhibitor of the game.
Yep, and they're certainly going to get this inhibitor, while Peanut, meanwhile, pushing this turret straight up into the Jin Air Green Wings base, and now it becomes very easy to actually coordinate this to either take the team fight or get the inhib.
Chains of Corruption onto Sohan, forced out his Zhonya's. He's not going to last much longer afterwards, and he will drop down. Peanut the one to claim that kill as well. The rest of the Tigers push through not one, but now looking for a second inhibitor as the minion wave will crash into this bottom base turret.
So they are going to get the inhibitor here, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just back off after this. No reason to extend. Whoa!
Oh. Or is there? LS Man's got other ideas. He's going to go in there and look for an ult to find something else. Cry able to make his way away from Petty's ultimate and barely survive a double takedown. Tigers just massacring the rest of the Jin Air Green Wings as they try to mount some form of defense that the Tigers have none of.
I guess this is why you don't bring Tigers on an airplane.
Generally a bad time for the Jin Air Green Wings. They have got to get these Tigers off this plane, but if they're not going to be able to do it in game number one, as the Tigers crush through their base, maul Jin Air back to the fountain, and it looks like Rocks Tigers are going for a few bonus points before turning this game into its end.